Today, I want to walk you through the core philosophy behind Offsides Macro, how the positioning framework is applied across asset classes, and then I'll briefly walk through the products themselves and how the street is using them to improve their process, not replace it. I'll start by framing the process itself because it's intentionally very data driven and agnostic in nature. At the core, what I'm focusing on is positioning across futures and options. I want to understand how one sided the street is across asset classes for idea generation, risk management, timing context, and regime awareness. From there, I dive deeper into three additional layers. I want to understand the cadence of flows. I want to understand what the prevailing narrative is. And then importantly, I want to understand the intensity of discussion surrounding that specific market. The framework is designed to identify those conditions early and provide context around risk concentration, reflexivity, and potential asymmetry. S&P positioning entered lower extreme territory even while the sentiment remained overwhelmingly negative. The framework wasn't attempting to forecast any of those things I just mentioned, or GDP, or what the Fed was going to do, or even predict a precise bottom. What it was simply doing was identifying that the market had already become materially one-sided. The context here helped portfolio managers think about adding risk, traders to avoid pressing shorts into stretch conditions, and advisors to better contextualize all this volatility for their clients. Energy later presented a somewhat similar dynamic, although with a very different narrative backdrop. Consensus throughout Q4 25 was dominated by oversupply fears. We repeatedly heard the term oil on water, and there was just structurally bearish sentiment in the market. Yet positioning itself was simultaneously pinned in lower extreme territory. What becomes interesting in those types of environments is not necessarily predicting an immediate reversal, but understanding when downside expectations may already be heavily embedded. Once again, the framework was identifying a disconnect between narrative intensity and the actual positioning structure itself. Lastly, the framework is not designed to replace fundamentals. It's designed to add positioning context around them. The weekly positioning report is really the foundation of the framework. Every week, the report identifies where positioning regimes are becoming stretched, where flows are accelerating or getting exhausted, and where narratives may no longer align with underlying position behavior. Again, you'll hear me say this a lot. The objective is not prediction, it's improving positioning awareness, regime context, and decision quality. For many investors and advisors, this becomes extremely valuable as part of their framework because it helps frame this volatility and identify where risk concentration may be building underneath the surface. The broader positioning analytics suite expands the framework beyond the weekly report into a full positioning and macro intelligence platform. Clients gain access to ongoing positioning analytics across more than 40 instruments, across equities, rates, FX, and commodities, including our proprietary USD positioning index. I want to be clear, this is not designed as a signal service. The objective is to create a repeatable framework for understanding how positioning and narrative interact beneath the surface of markets. The macro desk is where the framework becomes more dynamic intra-week. It focuses on positioning developments, derivatives activity, narrative shifts, and evolving market behavior as conditions change in real time. In many cases, the most important positioning developments occur before the broader narrative fully recognizes them. The objective is, again, improving positioning awareness and timing context before consensus fully adjusts. The cadence on the macro desk is not that noisy. It's anywhere from 5 to 10 posts per week, only when things make sense to point them out. Lastly, I wrote a white paper attempting to isolate positioning itself as a standalone macro factor. I ran this experiment in 2025, and I wrote at the time when I began it that I was going to publish the data and the results, no matter if it worked or not. And the results were very interesting. Importantly, the research intentionally stripped away any execution skill, technical overlays, or discretionary interpretation. The main question here was very narrow. Do positioning extremes alone exhibit asymmetric resolution characteristics over time or not? The broader framework itself emphasizes repeatability, consistency, and disciplined risk control rather than forecasting. So ultimately, the objective here is not prediction. It's not trying to replace fundamentals or even your process itself. It's to sharpen it. The goal is simply to better understand positioning, risk concentration, and how narratives and flows interact beneath the surface of markets. That's really the philosophy behind Offsides Macro and the framework itself. If any of this resonates or align with how you think already about markets, feel free to explore the research, the weekly positioning work, and the macro desk directly on the website.